The shattering moment. I woke up in a hospital bed, staring at the ceiling tiles, not knowing if it was morning or night. I reached down with my right hand and felt only the flat, empty space where my left leg used to be. Panic hit like a wave. My chest tightened. I couldn't breathe. My sister Sarah was sitting beside me, eyes red, holding my hand. "Mike," she whispered, "you're alive. That's all that matters." I wanted to believe her. I wanted to feel grateful. But all I could think about was the race I'd been training for, the life I was building, the woman I was about to marry. That night, Michelle walked in. My fiancée, the woman I had loved since I was 22. She stood at the foot of the bed, arms folded across her chest, lips pressed tight. She didn't hug me. She didn't touch me. She looked down, then said 5 words I'll never forget. "I didn't sign up for this." I blinked, waiting for her to laugh or cry or say she was scared, but she didn't. She turned and walked out of the room like I was a stranger she didn't know anything to. She left me. The day after I lost my leg, the woman I was going to marry left me. And in that moment, I thought everything was over. But it wasn't, because what happened next would change everything. Before everything fell apart, I had a good life. Not perfect, but solid. The kind of life that made sense. I was 32, living in a quiet neighborhood in St. Charles, Missouri, in a small brick house with a white porch swing my mom gave me when I moved out. I had just proposed to my longtime girlfriend, Mary, one day after 9 years of dating. We met at a charity 5K during college. She handed me a paper cup of water at mile 2, smiled, and said, "You're sweating like a man who's losing." I chased her number harder than I chased the finish line. Michelle was smart, put together, stylish in the effortless way people in magazines seem to be. She was a graphic designer, freelancing from home, always a little too obsessed with aesthetics and lighting and Instagram filters. But I loved her. Or maybe I loved the version of her that smiled when I made pancakes on Sundays and curled into my side during horror movies. I thought we were building a future. I thought she was in it with me. Running wasn't just a hobby. It was part of who I was. I had competed in track through high school and college. After graduation, I kept pushing myself. 5 kiloseconds, half marathons, then full ones. I was training to qualify for Boston. I'd run every morning before work, my feet hitting pavement, while the sky was still soft with dawn. People would call me obsessed, but I just felt focused. My job wasn't flashy. I worked as a physical education teacher at a local middle school. It paid the bills and gave me time to train. But I had bigger plans. I was saving up to start a youth running program. Something affordable, inclusive. Something that would give kids a way out of tough neighborhoods and toxic cycles. I called it Stride Beyond. The domain name was already mine. The idea felt bigger than me. My mom, I was my anchor. A retired elementary teacher with a stubborn streak and the softest hands you've ever felt. She used to wake up to braid my sister Tara's hair before school, then pack me little notes in my lunch. "Run like you're chasing joy." I still have one pinned to my fridge. Mom was skeptical about Michelle sometimes. She never said it outright, but I caught it in her tone. "You're finally settling down, baby," she said the day after I proposed. "You sure she's the one?" I laughed and waved her off. "Mom, I've run hundreds of miles. I'd still chase her barefoot." Sarah was my little sister by 4 years, a nurse. The kind of person who never asks how you are without already knowing. She'd always been tougher than me in quiet ways, calm in crisis, razor sharp in arguments. She and Kaylee got along on the surface, but there was a distance neither of them ever closed. Tara called it mutual toleration. I tried not to think too hard about it. Then there was Grandpa Silas, my dad's dad, a retired Marine, wheelchair-bound after a stroke, but still sharper than a rusted nail. He lived across town in a small assisted living center, and I visited him every Saturday without fail. We talked football, boxing, and the old days when men weren't afraid to bleed. He liked Reborn well enough, but I knew he didn't trust anyone who flinched at hard times. Once while watching a documentary about wounded veterans, he looked at me and said, "Anyone can love you when you're whole, but life doesn't keep you whole. Life breaks you. Find someone who hold the pieces, not run from them." I told him I already had. My days were full, but not chaotic. I'd wake up at a.m, lace up my shoes, and run 6 miles before sunrise, come back, shower, blend a protein shake, kiss a Reborn goodbye, while she sat on the couch with her laptop. I teach gym classes until late afternoon, then meet with a local mentor about launching my youth running foundation. Michelle would cook dinner maybe twice a week. The rest of the time, we ordered in or went to a place called Miller's Cafe, where the waitress knew our names and our favorite booth. We weren't flashy. We weren't perfect. But I thought we were real. I thought the proposal sealed that truth. I knelt on the track where we first met, pulled out the ring, and said, "Let's keep running together." She cried, said yes, called her mom, posted it to Instagram before I even stood up. I didn't see any cracks. Not really. Maybe I ignored them. Maybe I thought love was supposed to be tested later, after marriage, after kids. Maybe I believed that showing up every day was enough. I remember the week before the accident, lying in bed with her. She had her head on my chest and my hand in her hair. She asked, "Do you think we'll change?" "Yeah," I said. "We'll grow, but the roots stay the same." She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. I remember that now more clearly than anything else. Before the fall, that version of my life, the one filled with morning runs, warm meals, and wedding plans, ended on a Thursday afternoon under a clear sky, when a driver ran a red light and hit me going 61. They said I was lucky to survive, but the truth is I didn't walk away from that crash. A version of me died, and the version that woke up would have to figure out how to keep going without the woman I loved, and without the leg that had carried me through everything. And that's where the real story begins. The impact hit like a bomb. I never saw it coming. One second I was jogging across the crosswalk after finishing a 11 training run, the kind I'd done 100 times before. The next I was airborne. I remember a blinding white flash, the crunch of metal, and the sound of my own body slamming into the pavement like a rag doll. I woke up in a hospital bed. Everything felt numb. Sterile light poured in through a high window and machines beeped with hollow rhythm. I tried to sit up, but pain locked me in place. My mouth was dry. My head pounded. Then I saw Tara. She was holding my hand, her eyes rimmed red, face pale. Her voice cracked when she spoke. "Mike, they had to take it. They couldn't save your leg. I'm so sorry." I looked down and saw the blanket drop flat where my left leg should have been. It felt impossible, like a dream that hadn't ended yet. My heart thundered in my chest. I tried to breathe, but my body didn't feel like mine anymore. The room started spinning. In the following days, grief settled over me like cement. I stared at the wall for hours. Every movement was pain. Every breath reminded me that I had lost something I couldn't get back. I kept asking the same question. Why me? I had trained my whole life. I treated my body like a temple. I was healthy. I was careful. I did everything right. And still it all came crashing down. I remember the moment I finally asked for a mirror. I thought if I could just see it, I could begin to process it. The nurse wheeled one over. I looked at my body, my leg ending in a thick bandage stump, the skin stitched tight, angry and raw. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just stared at it like I was staring at someone else. That's when Michelle came. She walked into the hospital room 2 days after the surgery. Her arms were crossed. Her hair was done. She looked like she had just stepped out of a photo shoot. I remember thinking how perfect she still looked and how broken I felt in comparison. She stood at the edge of my bed, quiet. I waited for her to come closer, to hold me, to tell me we'd get through it. But she didn't move. I talked to the doctors, she said. They said, "You'll need months of rehab." Maybe a year. I nodded slowly, still numb. Yeah. It's going to be a long road. She looked down. Her eyes didn't meet mine. I didn't sign up for this. At first, I didn't understand. I asked what she meant. Her voice shook just slightly. I'm not trying to be cruel. I can't be part of this. I don't think I'm strong enough to be who you need now. I stared at her, trying to make sense of the words. This was the woman who said yes to marrying me 3 weeks ago. The woman I thought would sit beside me no matter what. You're leaving? I asked. I don't know how to do this, she said. I'm sorry. She turned and walked out of the room. No kiss, no promise, just a quick exit, like someone leaving a meeting that ran too long. One didn't call after her. I didn't scream. I lay there in silence, listening to her heels echo down the hall. That sound broke something in me. Sarah came in 11 minutes later and found me staring at the ceiling. She took one look at my face and knew. She left? She asked. I nodded. Sarah gritted her teeth, sat down hard in the chair, and just held my hand without speaking. That was the thing about her. She never filled silence with fluff. She just stayed when others ran. The next few weeks were a blur of painkillers, physical therapy, and papers to sign. I had to learn how to move again. Getting from the bed to the bathroom was a full workout. I had to relearn how to shower, how to dress, how to accept help. Everything that used to be second nature became a test of will. Nurses were kind, but I felt stripped of dignity. Once a man who could run 10 miles before breakfast. Now I needed help just getting out of bed. Every night I stared at the empty space where my leg should be. I couldn't stop replaying Michelle's words. I didn't sign up for this. Breaking point. They looped through my head like a cruel mantra. I had flashbacks to our late night talks, to the plans we made, to the way she used to squeeze my hand 3 times in a row to say I love you, without speaking. All of it felt hollow now. I had been abandoned at my lowest, and there was no sugarcoating that truth. It wasn't that she couldn't handle the injury. It was that she chose not to try. That realization hurt more than the amputation. The worst part wasn't losing my leg. It was realizing that love, the kind I believed was unbreakable, could vanish the second things got hard. And now I had to face recovery not just as an amputee, but as a man, completely alone. I spent the next 2 weeks in a haze of pain and silence. There were moments when I forgot I had one leg. I'd reach to stretch, instinctively swing both feet off the bed, and be hit with a wave of pain that forced reality back into focus. Every time I looked down, it felt like grief all over again. I didn't talk much. The nurses tried. Sarah stayed as long as her shifts allowed. My mum visited every day, always bringing something. Socks, a sandwich, pictures from home. But I was closed off. Numb but not angry, just empty. One day, I heard a nurse whisper outside the door. He's not engaging, not even with family. That word stuck with me. Not engaging. Like I had the option to skip this part. Like there was a switch I could flip. What they didn't understand was I wasn't choosing to be distant. I was stuck. I had lost not just a leg, but the life I had trained for, the future I planned, and the person I trusted most. Then came Grandpa Silas. He rolled into the room in his wheelchair like he owned the place. He wasn't big on hugs, but he squeezed my shoulder tight before backing into the corner, parking like he was settling in for a fight. He didn't start with sympathy. He never did. You know what I told myself after I got hit with shrapnel in '66? He said, I told myself, well, this leg's done. I guess I'll walk with the other. Then I spent the next 4 years proving I wasn't finished. I didn't answer. He stared at me until I looked him in the eye. She left, he said. I nodded. He leaned forward, elbows on his knees. Good. She showed you early. A woman who walks out when you're broken would have poisoned you when you were whole. I felt my throat tighten, but I didn't speak. You still got one leg, 2 lungs, a working brain, and a damn heartbeat. What you don't have is an excuse. He left without another word, but something about the way he said it The weight. The certainty dug into me, deeper than any pep talk could. That night, I couldn't sleep. I sat up in bed and stared at the wall. My mind kept replaying the last time I ran, the wind in my ears, the way my feet slapped the pavement, how alive I felt. I missed that feeling more than anything. It hit me then. I wasn't mourning my leg. I was mourning movement, momentum, purpose. I reached for my phone, opened the browser, and typed ampute runners. Within seconds, I found videos of athletes with blades, fast, powerful, relentless. They looked different, but they ran like fire. One clip showed a man crossing the finish line with tears in his eyes, and a lady kicking up dust behind him. That was the moment something broke open in me. I didn't want pity. I didn't want people to hold doors open with sad smiles or tell me I was brave just for standing. I wanted to run again. I wanted to sweat, to fail, to push, to bleed if I had to. But most of all, I wanted to fight for something. I clicked through pages of rehab centers and prosthetic clinics until I found one that specialized in high-performance athletic prosthetics. It wasn't close and it wasn't cheap, but I didn't care. The next morning, I told Sarah, "I want a blade," I said. "I want to run again." She stared at me, tears welling. "Okay," she said. "Let's make a plan." I started small, sitting up on my own, learning to balance with crutches, building core strength. The first time I stood on my right leg and tried to pivot, I fell hard. I bruised my ribs and bloodied my elbow. A nurse tried to help me up. I waved her off. "Again," I said. 3 weeks later, I took my first steps on a temporary prosthetic. It was clunky, stiff, and made everything ache. But I moved, and no one could take that from me. At night, I wrote in a notebook goals, training plans, names for my foundation. Stride Beyond stared back at me from the page like a challenge. I called a local non-profit coordinator from my hospital bed and asked how to register as a 500c3. He sounded surprised. "Usually, people wait until they're better," he said. I smiled without meaning to. This is how I get better. I started documenting my journey. Pictures, notes, little videos of progress. I wasn't trying to go viral. I just wanted to remember how far I came when I started to forget again. People started reaching out. Parents of kids with amputations, veterans, a former classmate who had lost his hand in a construction accident. They asked questions, shared their stories. Some just said, "Thank you." That was the first time I felt like I was building something again. I hadn't just lost my leg, rebuilding the fire. I had lost direction, and now I was choosing it back. The world hadn't saved me. No one handed me strength, but I had found a way to stand anyway, and I was just getting started. 3 years after the accident, I stood at the starting line of the New York City Marathon. The crowd was electric. Thousands of runners surrounded me, stretching, pacing, praying, laughing, trying to fight the nerves. I bounced lightly on my right leg and adjusted my carbon fiber running blade. The sky above the Verrazano Bridge was a crisp blue, the kind that made everything feel possible. I had trained for this moment every day for over a year. I had fallen, I had cried, I had ripped open healing skin and relearned how to land, stride, and balance. But I made it. The blade didn't feel foreign anymore. It felt like part of me. My mom stood with Tara on the sidelines, both of them holding signs that said, "Run like you never stopped." Grandpa Silas couldn't make the trip, but he sent me a voice message that morning. "You're not just proving something to the world, Mike. You're proving it to yourself. That's what counts." The gun fired. I ran. Each mile was a test. I could feel the sweat building behind my neck, the pull of muscle across my back, the impact through my right leg, and the spring-loaded rhythm of my blade on the left. People cheered from every corner. Kids held out high fives. Strangers shouted my name from the bib on my chest. At mile 13, something shifted. It wasn't just about the finish line anymore. It was about every moment that had led to this. Every early morning, Sarah helped me out of bed. Every step I took down the rehab hall, every child I spoke to through Stride Beyond, showing them they weren't broken, only redesigned. I crossed the finish line just under 4 hours and 30 minutes. I was in the top 5 among ampute runners. They handed me a medal. I didn't cry. I just stood still, breathing hard, heart pounding, soaking in what it meant to be here, not just as a survivor, but as a man who had built something stronger from the ruins. Later that night, back at the hotel, Sarah and I ordered burgers and milkshakes. The kind of post-race meal that always tastes better than it should. We sat on the floor, shoes off, metal still around my neck. We laughed about how a dog had tried to chase me during mile 5. Then my phone buzzed. At first, I ignored it. Then I glanced at the screen. Friend request Mary Wandane. I froze. Sarah noticed. No way, she said. I stared at the profile photo. It was her standing in front of a lake smiling. There was no caption, no message, just the request. It hit me in a strange quiet way. Not like a punch, but like an echo. I hadn't thought about her in months. Not really. Not in any real way. But there she was watching from the outside. I clicked her profile. There were photos, a few new ones, not many. No mention of a boyfriend. Nothing to explain why she reached out. Then I noticed the timing. She had sent the request an hour after I crossed the finish line. Just after a local news station posted a clip of me sprinting to the end, arms raised, the camera tight on my blade. She had seen it. She had watched me run again. Maybe she expected a polite reply, a message of peace, maybe even a door left open. But the truth was, I didn't owe her that. Not anymore. I clicked the message button. I typed, "You said you didn't sign up, so don't." Then I hit send. Then I hit delete request. Then I turned off my phone. Sarah leaned her head back against the wall. Damn, that's cold. No, I said, it's honest. I hadn't spent the last 2 years rebuilding myself to become someone for her. I had done it to become someone for me, for the kids in my program, for the people who were told they'd never run again, never dance again, never stand tall again. I did it because I wasn't finished. The next day, I went back to the park near the hotel and met a group of kids from Stride Beyond who came out with their parents to see the metal. Some of them wore prosthetics. Some were in wheelchairs. All of them were beaming. One boy, maybe 9 years old, tugged at my shirt and asked, "Do you ever get scared people won't like you because of your leg?" I knelt down and said, "Sometimes, but I've learned the right people don't care how many legs you have. They care how far you're willing to go." He nodded like he already knew what that meant. I stood back up, took a deep breath, and felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. Peace. Not because I won, not because I proved anyone wrong, but because I had made something out of my pain that meant something to someone else. I wasn't defined by what I lost. I was defined by what I built in its place. A few months after the marathon, I stood in a high school auditorium in Kansas City, holding a microphone in one hand and a running blade in the other. The room was packed with students, parents, coaches, and a few kids in the front row wearing prosthetics of their own. Behind me was a screen showing a clip of the New York City finish line. My chest rose and fell on repeat, arms wide, sweat pouring, the blade flexing hard into the final stride. Stronger than before. I looked at the crowd. Everyone has something they didn't ask for. I said a loss, a pain, a moment that broke them. For me, it was the accident. For you, it might be something else. But the truth is this: what you do next matters more than what happened. A boy in the second row raised his hand. He was maybe 12, missing his right arm below the elbow. "Did it ever feel like you weren't worth loving anymore?" he asked. The question hit like a punch to the ribs. I took a breath, stepped forward, and answered honestly, yes. After I lost my leg, my fiancée left. She said she didn't sign up for the version of me that needed help, the version that looked different. And for a while, I believed her. I thought I was damaged. I thought no one would ever look at me and see anything but what was missing. I raised the blade into the air, but I was wrong, because this doesn't make me less. It makes me more. The auditorium went quiet. Then someone clapped. Then another. Then the whole room was on their feet. After the talk, parents came up to shake my hand. Kids asked to take photos. One girl with two prosthetic legs hugged me so tight my ribs cracked. I didn't flinch. That night, I sat in my hotel room and read through emails from students who had heard me speak. Some had lost limbs. Others had faced trauma that left no physical scars. Abuse, bullying, depression. They told me I gave them hope. Hope. That word used to feel like a wish. Now it felt like a responsibility. Stride Beyond was growing. We had partnerships with schools, grants from local organizations, and volunteers who were showing up every weekend to train kids. We weren't just teaching them to run. We were teaching them how to fight through pain, how to hold on to identity when the world tries to write you off, how to look in the mirror and not flinch. Sometimes I think about the life I lost, the races I didn't get to run, the wedding that never happened. But then I think about the kids who now believe they have a future, because they saw someone like them refuse to quit. And I realized I didn't lose my purpose. I just had to meet it the hard way. One afternoon, I visited my mom. She made grilled cheese and tomato soup, the kind she used to make when I was sick in elementary school. She sat across from me in her kitchen, smiling gently as I told her about the school programs and the kids who had just joined the foundation. She reached across the table and squeezed my hand. "You're doing exactly what you were meant to do," she said. I nodded. I think I had to lose everything first to figure out what actually mattered. She didn't correct me. She just held my hand a little tighter. Later that evening, I went to see Grandpa Silas. He wasn't talking as much these days, but his eyes were sharp. I told him about the marathon, about Michelle's friend request, about how I replied and walked away without hesitation. He gave a slow, satisfied nod. "That's the kind of man I raised," he said. Before I left, I stood beside his wheelchair and said something I had never told him. "Back in the hospital, when you said I had no excuse, you were right. I didn't, but I needed someone to remind me." He smiled. "The strong just forget who they are sometimes." I walked out feeling like the story had finally come full circle. These days I still run, not always in marathons. Sometimes it's just a few laps at the community track with a group of kids, some of them wearing blades, some just chasing the wind. I run beside them and remind them of the same thing I remind myself every day. You're not broken. You're rebuilt. That difference changes everything. I'm not who I was before the accident. I'll never be that version of Mike again, but I'm stronger. I'm more patient. I'm more focused on what actually matters. Michelle was right in one way. She didn't sign up for this version of my life, but I did. And I would again, because out of pain came purpose. Out of abandonment came independence. Out of one leg came the ability to carry more than I ever thought I could. And I'm still running. So, if you've made it this far, thank you. Thank you for listening to my story. Not just the pain, but the rebuild. If you're going through something right now, if you've lost something, someone, or even part of yourself, I want you to remember this. You are not broken. You are not less. You are being rebuilt into something stronger than before. Not everyone will stay. Not everyone will understand. But the right people will show up when the world walks out. And when they do, you'll know who you really are. If this story meant something to you, if it made you feel seen, if it gave you even a spark of hope, do me a favor, like this video, share it with someone who might need it, comment below, and tell me where you're running to next, whether it's a real finish line or just the next step forward. And if you want more stories like this, real, raw, honest, subscribe to the channel. This is just the beginning. We're not here to be perfect. We're here to keep moving. And no matter how hard life hits, we run anyway. As the days turned into weeks and the weeks into months, the road to recovery became not just a physical journey, but an emotional pilgrimage. I had to rebuild every piece of myself, not just muscle and balance, but trust, hope, and the meaning of endurance. There were nights I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, feeling the weight of everything I had lost pressing down like an iron plate. But somewhere in those sleepless hours, a new resolve took shape, quiet, steady, unshakable. Recovery was never linear. Some mornings, victory looked like standing without wobbling for 3 full seconds. Other days, it meant falling hard and forcing myself to get back up anyway. Pain became a language I understood, but refused to be defined by. Every time I wrapped the prosthetic around the stump, I whispered to myself, one more step. And slowly, step by step, the world began to widen again. I learned to run, not with the same ease as before, but with more purpose. The blade became an extension of me, not a reminder of what I had lost, but a symbol of what I could still achieve. Kids at the foundation started calling me Coach Iron, a name that made me smile every single time. They didn't see a broken man, they saw someone who refused to stop. At night, after training, I would walk through quiet streets, the city lights flickering like distant constellations, and think about how strange life could be. The same world that had taken something from me had also given me new people, new purpose, new fire. My mother often said, "Grief carves the space where strength will live." I didn't understand it then. I do now. There was a moment, a small, almost invisible one, that changed everything. A young girl at Stride Beyond, barely 9 years old, ran her first full lap without stopping. She turned back, eyes shining, and shouted, "I did it." That night, I cried alone, not from pain, but from the overwhelming weight of joy. This was the life I hadn't planned, but the one I was meant to build. Grandpa Silas' words echoed in my heart every single race day. The world doesn't give you strength. It gives you tests. The strength comes when you choose to keep going. And I kept going. I learned to find beauty in the smallest victories, like the way the morning air felt against my face or the sound of kids' laughter bouncing across the track. There was no magic moment when everything became easy, but there was a slow, powerful shift where the pain stopped being my enemy and became my teacher. Every fall, every doubt, every setback taught me resilience in a language only the broken learn to speak. Now, when I stand at a starting line, surrounded by thousands, I know I'm not running away from the past. I'm running toward the life I've forged with my own hands and will. And that, more than any medal, is my victory.